They say that red wine is one of the hardest stains to get out of silk, especially white silk, especially expensive imported bridal grade white silk. I watched the dark crimson liquid splash across the bodice of the gown, soaking into the delicate lace flowers and dripping down the skirt like a slow, jagged wound. The gasp that went through the reception hall was so loud it sucked the air right out of the room. The music stopped. The chatter died. For a second, the only sound was the drip, drip, drip of the Merlot hitting the polished wooden floor. And then came the scream. "You ruined it, you clumsy, jealous little... Look what you've done!" My mother-in-law, Margaret, stood there, clutching the fabric of her white ball gown, a gown that was bigger, brighter, and more elaborate than the one I was wearing. She looked at me with eyes full of pure, unadulterated hatred. My husband, David, was frozen beside me, his mouth slightly open, looking from his mother to me, paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of the moment. I should have felt mortified. I should have been crying. After all, it was my wedding reception. But as I looked at the red stain spreading across her chest, ruining the dress she had worn specifically to humiliate me, I didn't feel shame. I felt peace. But to understand why I did it, and yes, I did it, you have to understand that the wine wasn't an accident. It was the only answer I had left. It was the end of a very long, very quiet war that started the day David first introduced me to the woman who called him her soulmate. I met David in a library of all places. It sounds like a cliché from a romance novel, but that's really how it happened. I was reaching for a book on architectural history, and he was reaching for the same one. We laughed, we got coffee, and 3 hours later, I knew I was in trouble. David was everything I wasn't. I was sharp edges, career-focused, organized to a fault, and a little bit guarded. David was soft. He was kind. He was the type of man who stopped to help turtles cross the road and called his grandmother every Sunday without fail. He brought a softness into my life that I didn't know I needed. For the first year, it was bliss. We moved in together after 10 months. We painted the walls of our little apartment a soft sage green. We cooked dinner together. He chopped the vegetables because I hated doing it, and I handled the searing and the sauces. We were a team. There was only one shadow in our perfect little world, a shadow that rang his phone at 7 a.m. on Saturdays and demanded to know why he hadn't texted good night the evening before. "It's just my mom," David would say, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, his voice apologetic. "She gets lonely since Dad passed. She worries." "She calls you 5 times a day, David," I'd say, trying to keep my voice light. "That's a lot of worrying." "She just loves hard, Elena. You'll understand when you meet her. She's intense, but she means well." I wanted to believe him, I really did. I wanted to have that warm, big family dynamic where the mother-in-law teaches you her secret recipes and knits blankets for your future children. I didn't have a lot of family of my own. My parents had retired to Florida and were busy living their best golf course lives, so I was ready to be embraced. But Margaret didn't want to embrace me. She wanted to erase me. The first time I met her, I felt it. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and the temperature seems to drop 10 degrees? We went to her house for Sunday dinner. It was a beautiful house, immaculate really, white carpets, glass figurines on every surface, the kind of place where you're afraid to breathe too hard in case you break something. When David walked in, Margaret didn't just hug him, she latched onto him. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his chest, making this low, whimpering sound. "Oh, my Davy, you look so thin. Is she feeding you? You look tired." She pulled back, holding his face in her hands, ignoring me completely. I stood there holding a bottle of wine and a bouquet of lilies, feeling like a door-to-door salesman that no one wanted to talk to. Finally, David gently peeled his hands off his face and turned to me. Mom, this is Elena, the one I've been telling you about. Margaret turned. Her eyes scanned me from my shoes to my hair. It wasn't a friendly look. It was an appraisal, like she was a health inspector looking for a violation in a restaurant kitchen. Elena, she said. She didn't smile. Accepting you to be taller. David usually likes tall girls. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Albright, I said, forcing a smile and holding out the flowers. These are for you. She took the flowers by the stems, barely looking at them. Lilies. I'm allergic to the pollen, but thank you. I'll put them in the garage. Dinner was an interrogation. She didn't ask about my job as an architect. She didn't ask about my hobbies. She asked about my credit score. She asked if my parents were still married. She asked if I planned to work once we had children, implying that good mothers certainly didn't work. But the real kicker came during dessert. David had stepped away to use the restroom, leaving us alone at the mahogany dining table. Margaret set down her teacup. The china clinked sharply against the saucer. David is a sensitive soul, you know, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He is, I agreed. It's one of the things I love about him. He needs someone who understands him, someone who puts him first. Always. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. I seen girls like you, Elena, career girls. You think you can slot a husband into your schedule like a dentist appointment. David won't survive that. I love David very much, Margaret, I said, keeping my tone calm, though my heart was hammering. We'll see, she said darkly. Just know that I'm watching. I won't let anyone hurt my boy. When David came back, she instantly transformed. Her face softened, her voice became high and sweet. Oh, Davy, Elena was just telling me how busy she is with work. I hope she has time for you, sweetheart. She patted his hand. David smiled at her, oblivious. She makes time, Mom, don't worry. As we drove home that night, I tried to tell David about the shift in her personality. She's just protective, he insisted, gripping the steering wheel. She's had a hard life. Once she sees how happy you make me, she'll come around. Please, Elena, give her a chance for me. I looked at him, his hopeful eyes, his gentle nature, and I sighed. Okay, for you. That was my first mistake, thinking that my love for him could outweigh her obsession with him. Fast forward 2 years, David proposed. He did it beautifully, a private picnic in the park where we had our first date. No cameras, no audience, just us. It was perfect. We called Margaret on speakerphone to tell her the news. Mom, we have news, David said, beaming. I asked Elena to marry me. She said yes. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a long, heavy silence. I expected a congratulations or even a fake gasp of joy. Instead, we heard a small sniffle, then a sob. Mom? David fell his face. Mom, are you okay? Margaret's voice trembled through the speaker. I just didn't think it would happen so soon. I feel like I'm losing my baby. I feel like I'm dying, David. David spent the next 45 minutes comforting her, assuring her that he wasn't abandoning her, that she would always be the most important woman in his life. By the time he hung up, the joy of the proposal had evaporated. He looked exhausted. I looked at the ring on my finger and felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Margaret hated the venue. It looks like a barn. She hated the date. November is so depressing. She hated the food tasting. Too spicy. David has a delicate stomach. He doesn't. But the real battle was the dress. I found my dress at a small boutique. It was sleek, modern, with a high neck and an open back. It was elegant and understated. I felt like a queen in it. Margaret, who had insisted on coming to the fitting, sat in the corner of the dressing room, her lips pursed. It's very plain, she sniffed. It looks like a slip. A wedding dress should make a statement, Elena. It should say, I am the bride. This says, I am the guest. I love it, Margaret, I said firmly, turning in the mirror, and David will love it. David likes lace, she countered. He's always said he loves a traditional ball gown, big skirt, tulle, something grand. This looks cheap. Well, it's a good thing David isn't wearing it, my maid of honor, Sarah, snapped from the couch. Margaret glared at her, then turned her cold eyes back to me. Fine, if that's what you want, but don't blame me when you disappear in the photos. After that day, Margaret stopped talking about clothes. Whenever I asked her what she was planning to wear, as the mother of the groom, she would get this vague, secretive smile on her face. "Oh, don't you worry about me, dear," she'd say, waving her hand. "I found something special, a lovely little cocktail dress, champagne-colored, very subtle. I don't want to draw focus." "Do you have a picture?" I asked, about 2 weeks before the wedding. No, it's at the tailor. Trust me, Elena, I'll blend right in." I should have known. I should have demanded to see it, but I was so tired of fighting her. I was so busy managing the caterers, the seating charts, and David's growing. The dinner service was a blur of clinking silverware and murmurs. Usually at weddings, the murmurs are about how good the beef is or how beautiful the centerpieces look. At my wedding, the murmurs were all about the white elephant in the room. Margaret. She didn't stay seated at the head table. Oh no, that would have been too subtle. She floated from table to table, her skirt taking up the entire aisle, greeting guests like she was holding court. I watched her from my seat. I hadn't touched my food. I was gripping my fork so hard my knuckles were white. "She's telling your Aunt Linda that she bought that dress because you couldn't afford a nice one," Sarah whispered, leaning over from the maid of honor seat. She looked like she was about to stab a bread roll with a steak knife. "Alina, give me the signal. I will spill a tureen of gravy on her. I'll do the time. I don't care." "No," I said quietly. "Not you. If anyone does it, it has to be an accident, a clumsy, tragic accident." The breaking point didn't come during dinner. It came during the speeches. My father gave a lovely, stumbling speech about how he used to read me bedtime stories. David's best man told a funny story about college. And then, just as the DJ was about to announce the cutting of the cake, Margaret stood up. She didn't have the microphone. She just walked to the center of the dance floor and clapped her hands until the room fell silent. "I'd like to say a few words," she announced, her voice projecting with theatrical training I didn't know she had. David stiffened beside me. "Mom, we didn't schedule—" "Hush, Davy," she waved him off. She turned to the crowd, the lights catching the sequins on her bridal bodice. She looked angelic, if angels were narcissists sent to test your sanity. "I just wanted to thank everyone for coming to our special day," she began. "Not David and Elena's special day, our special day. When David was born," she continued, getting misty-eyed, "I looked at him and I promised that no woman would ever love him as much as I do. And today," she paused, looking at me with a smile that didn't reach her cold, hard eyes, "today I hand him over. It's a sacrifice. A mother's sacrifice is the purest love there is. I just hope Elena realizes what a treasure she has. And if she ever forgets, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'll always be the first woman in his heart." The room was dead silent. It wasn't a touching speech. It was territory marking. It was a threat. She finished by raising her glass, empty, and doing a little curtsy. The applause was scattered and awkward. David looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "She's drunk. She has to be drunk." "She's not drunk, David," I said, standing up. "She's sober. That's the problem." "Where are you going?" he asked, panic flaring in his eyes. "I'm getting a drink. I'm parched." I walked over to the bar. My heart was pounding a slow, heavy rhythm in my ears. Thump, thump, thump. The bartender, a young guy named Mike who had been watching the drama unfold with wide eyes, looked at me sympathetically. "What can I get you, Mrs. Albright?" he asked. "Wine," I said. "Red, the darkest, heaviest thing you have. A Cabernet or a Malbec." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. He poured a generous glass of a deep, inky Merlot. It was almost purple in the dim lighting. I took the glass. It felt heavy in my hand, cold, solid. I turned back to the room. Margaret was standing near the cake table, surrounded by 3 of her friends, laughing. Her back was to me. Her dress, that massive white tulle monstrosity, was pooled around her on the floor, spreading out like a fan. She was blocking the path to the restrooms. She was blocking the path to the cake. She was taking up all the space, just like she had taken up all the space in David's life. I started walking. I wasn't running. I wasn't stomping. I was walking with the grace of a bride. My own dress was sleek, allowing me to move silently. I kept my eyes locked on her. I saw her throw her head back and laugh. I saw her hand touch the arm of David's aunt, drawing attention to the ring on her finger, a ring that looked suspiciously like an engagement ring, though she'd been a widow for 10 years. I got closer. 10 feet? 5 feet. I could smell her perfume. It was heavy, floral, choking. I needed it to be perfect. I needed plausible deniability. I couldn't just throw it in her face like a real housewife. That would make me the aggressor. That would make me the crazy daughter-in-law. No, I needed to be the victim of her dress. I walked right up to the edge of her tulle train. "Excuse me, Margaret," I said, my voice sweet but firm. She turned. She saw me. She saw the wine glass in my hand. For a split second, her eyes flickered to the glass, then up to my face. She sneered. "Oh, Elena, be careful with that cheap wine. You don't want to stain your, well, I suppose it's a nice dress for a budget." That was it. That was the permission slip I needed. I took a step forward. I deliberately planted the toe of my white satin heel onto the hem of her dress. "I'm just trying to get to the cake," I said. I put my weight on the foot trapping her dress. Then I tried to take a step with the other foot. The physics did the rest. Her dress didn't give. My foot was anchored. I pitched forward. "Whoa!" I cried out. It wasn't acting. I really was falling. But as I fell, I made a choice, a split-second calculation. I didn't drop the glass. I didn't throw the glass away from us. I let the glass follow the arc of my fall. My hand flailed forward, seeking balance. The glass tipped. The liquid left the crystal goblet in a beautiful, horrifying wave. It wasn't a splash. It was a deluge. It hit her square in the chest. We woke up the next morning in the hotel suite, tangled in sheets, with the sun streaming through the blackout curtains we hadn't closed properly. For a few minutes, lying there in the quiet, I forgot everything. I forgot the trench coat. I forgot the wine. I just felt the ring on my finger and the steady breathing of my husband beside me. But peace in the 21st century is fragile. It usually breaks the moment you pick up your phone. David woke up, kissed my forehead, and reached for his iPhone on the nightstand. "I want to see if anyone posted photos yet," he mumbled sleepily. I stretched, reaching for my own phone. I bet Sarah posted 100 selfies. I unlocked my screen. I had 42 missed calls, 36 text messages, and over 100 notifications from Facebook and Instagram. My stomach dropped. That wasn't normal. "David," I said, sitting up, "something's happening." David was already staring at his screen. His face had gone pale, the sleepy happiness draining away instantly. "Oh, God, Mom." I opened Facebook. The first thing on my feed wasn't a picture of our cake or our first dance. It was a post from Margaret. She had posted it at 3 a.m. It was a long, rambling wall of text, captioned with a blurry photo of her red-stained chest, cropped so tight you couldn't tell she was wearing a wedding dress. It just looked like white fabric and blood. The caption read, "I have never felt so betrayed. Last night at my own son's wedding, I was physically assaulted by his new wife. She threw a glass of wine on me because she was jealous of the attention I was getting from family. My heart is broken. I have been kicked out like a dog. My son has chosen his abuser over his mother. Please pray for me as I recover from this trauma." The post had hundreds of likes. The comments from her church friends and distant relatives were horrific. OMG, Margaret, that's assault. Call the police. I always knew she was trouble. Stay strong. How could David let this happen? Shameful. I felt sick, physically sick. She was twisting the narrative so fast I barely had time to breathe. She was painting me as a violent monster. She cut out the dress, I whispered, showing David the screen. She cropped the photo so no one can see it's a ball gown. She's making it look like I attacked an old lady in a blouse. David threw his phone onto the duvet. He put his head in his hands. She's insane. She's actually insane. I have to call her. I have to make her take it down. No, I said, grabbing his hand. Do not call her. That's what she wants. She wants the fight. She wants you to beg. But look at the comments, Elena. They're destroying you. They're calling you a bridezilla. Wait, I said, scrolling down. Just wait. Because while Margaret had her echo chamber of enablers, the internet is a vast place, and a wedding with 100 guests means 100 witnesses. 16. The Court of Public Opinion. I refreshed the page. Underneath Margaret's sob story, a new comment had appeared. It was from my cousin, Jessica. Jessica has zero filter and even less patience. Jessica had commented, Margaret, are you serious right now? Post the full photo. Show everyone what you were wearing. You wore a wedding dress to your son's wedding. The wine was an accident, but that dress was a choice. And then she posted a photo in the comments, a high-definition photo she'd taken from table 4. It showed Margaret in all her glory, the massive white tulle skirt, the sequins, the bridal updo, standing next to me in my sleek gown. The visual evidence was undeniable. She looked like a cartoon villain. The tide turned so fast it gave me whiplash. The replies started pouring in. Wait, is she wearing a bridal gown? OMG, she wore white? I thought she was the bride. Lady, you deserve the wine. I would have thrown the whole bottle. Then Sarah, my maid of honor, entered the chat. She didn't just comment, she made her own post and tagged Margaret. It was a video. It was a video of Margaret screaming, "You clumsy, jealous little bitch," while David looked horrified. Sarah's caption was simple. When the monster-in-law tries to upstage the bride and gets hit with instant karma, hashtag wedding fail, hashtag boy mom, hashtag wine time. The video was already going viral. It had 5,000 views, then 10,000. We watched in real time as the sympathy for Margaret evaporated. Her prayer warriors went silent. Strangers started commenting, roasting her. Memes started popping up. Someone photoshopped her into the Titanic poster. Someone else captioned her photo, "When you want to marry your son, but it's illegal." It was brutal. It was the kind of public shaming that usually ruins lives. But I didn't feel triumphant. I looked at David. He wasn't laughing. He was reading the comments mocking his mother, and he looked devastated. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "This is a lot." "It's the truth, though," he said, his voice hollow. "For the first time, everyone sees who she really is. I've spent my whole life trying to hide her crazy, trying to smooth things over, and now it's all out there." He picked up his phone again. He didn't call her. He opened his settings. "What are you doing?" "I'm blocking her," David said, "on everything. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. If she wants to talk to me, she can talk to a lawyer." He pressed the buttons with a finality that made me shiver. It wasn't a rage block. It was a grief block. He was mourning the mother he wished he had while cutting off the one he actually had. 17. The Flying Monkeys. We spent the rest of the honeymoon avoiding our phones, but the fallout continued when we got back home. The flying monkeys arrived. In psychology, flying monkeys are the people a narcissist sends to do their bidding when they can't reach you. First, it was David's Aunt Linda. She showed up at our front door 2 days after we got back, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. We didn't invite her in. We stood on the porch. "David," she said, looking pained, "your mother is in a bad way. She hasn't eaten. She's crying all day. She says you won't take her calls." "I won't," David said, his arms crossed. But she's your mother. Look, she made a mistake with the dress. She knows that. But she's old. She's confused. She didn't mean any harm. You can't just cut her off. It's cruel. Cruel? David laughed, a harsh bark-like sound. He tried to ruin my wedding, Linda. He called my wife a bitch. He lied on the internet and said Elena assaulted her. That's not a mistake. That's malice. She's willing to forgive Elena for the wine, Linda tried, desperate. She said if Elena apologizes publicly, she'll drop it. I stepped forward. I will not apologize, and I don't want her forgiveness. Linda looked at me with distaste. You're tearing this family apart. No, David said, stepping in front of me. She's building a family with me. Anyone who tries to destroy that isn't family anymore. You can take the casserole home, Linda. He closed the door in her face. He leaned his forehead against the wood of the door, breathing hard. You okay? I asked. No, he admitted, but I will be. A week later, a letter arrived, certified mail. It wasn't from a lawyer. It was from Margaret. Since she was blocked digitally, she had gone analog. David opened it at the kitchen counter. I watched his eyes scan the page. He didn't cringe. He didn't get angry. He just sighed, a long, tired exhale. What does it say? I asked. He handed it to me. It was 3 pages of handwriting. The first page was pure guilt. I sacrificed for you. How can you treat me this way? The second page was bribery. I was going to give you the grandmother's sapphire ring, but now I don't know if I can trust Elena with it. The third page was the threat. If you don't call me by Sunday, I'm writing you out of the will. I'm selling the house. You will get nothing. It was the narcissist's greatest hits album. Guilt, money, threat. I looked at David. She's threatening to disinherit you? David looked around our small kitchen. He looked at the wedding photo we had just put up on the fridge, a candid shot of us dancing, laughing, unburdened. She thinks money is the only thing that binds people, David said. She thinks she can buy me back. Does she have a lot? I asked. I honestly didn't know. Enough, he said, but it's not worth the price of admission. He took the letter from my hand. He walked over to the trash can. He didn't rip it up. He didn't burn it. He just dropped it in, right on top of the coffee grounds and eggshells. What are you going to do? I asked. I'm going to make dinner, he said. Tacos? That was the moment I knew we were really safe. He didn't react. He didn't negotiate. He treated her threat with the exact level of importance it deserved. Garbage. Margaret had played her final card. She had worn the dress, she had spilled the lies, she had threatened the money, and she had lost. But there was one final thing I needed to do, one final loose end to tie up to find my own peace. The thing about silence is it makes you paranoid. For 3 months after the wedding, we heard nothing. No calls, no letters, no flying monkeys. David changed his number. I locked down my social media. We started going to therapy, couples counseling to learn how to deprogram the guilt buttons Margaret had installed in David's brain since childhood. Life started to feel normal. We bought a dog, a goofy golden retriever named Buster. We hosted Thanksgiving for my parents. It was peaceful. No drama, no tears, just turkey. There's a saying in law, never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. We sent the video file to our lawyer, Karen. She watched it 3 times. When she called us back, her voice had changed. The stress was gone, replaced by the sharp, predatory tone of a shark sensing blood in the water. This is a kill shot, Karen said, but we don't just email it to her lawyer. If we do that, she'll just drop the suit quietly and spin a story about how she took pity on you. You won't get closure. You won't get your legal fees back. So what do? David asked. We go through with the deposition, Karen said. We get her under oath. We let her tell her lies on the official record. We let her commit perjury. Then we play the tape. It was ruthless. It was expensive. But after the wedding dress, the fake heart attack, and the lawsuit, ruthless felt like the only language Margaret understood. The deposition took place in a conference room in a high-rise downtown. It was a gray, rainy Tuesday. The room smelled of floor polish and stale coffee. Margaret arrived 10 minutes late. She was wearing all black, a dramatic mourning widow look, even though her husband had been dead for a decade. She looked frail. She was using a cane I had never seen her use before. She didn't look at David. She stared straight ahead, clutching her handbag like it contained the crown jewels. Her lawyer, a frantic-looking man named Mr. Henderson, looked confident. He thought this was an easy shakedown. We sat across the table, David, me, and Karen. The court reporter set up her machine. Click, clack, hum. "Raise your right hand," the reporter said. Margaret raised a trembling hand. She swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I watched her face. She didn't even blink. To a narcissist, the truth is whatever they feel in the moment. Caber 32, the performance. Karen started gently. She asked about the wedding. She asked about the dress. "Mrs. Albright," Karen asked, "why did you wear a white ball gown to your son's wedding?" Margaret dabbed her dry eyes with a tissue. "It was champagne, and I wore it because, well, I wanted to honor the occasion. I wanted to look beautiful for my son. Is it a crime to want to look beautiful?" "And the wine incident?" "She attacked me." Margaret pointed a shaking finger at me. "She saw me looking happy and she couldn't stand it. She threw it right in my face. It burned my eyes. I still have nightmares." I kept my face stone cold. Let her talk. Then they got to the money, the $60,000. "Mrs. Albright," Karen said, glancing at her notes, "regarding the transfer of $60,000 on August 12, 2019, you claim this was a loan?" "Yes," Margaret said firmly, "a short-term bridge loan. David promised to pay me back within 2 years." "Was there a written agreement?" "No, I trusted my son. We had a verbal contract, handshake. A mother shouldn't need a contract with her child." "So you specifically told him he had to pay it back?" "Explicitly," Margaret lied. She leaned into the microphone. "I told him, 'David, this is my retirement money. I need it back.' And he said, 'I promise, Mom, every penny.'" "And you never referred to it as a gift?" "Never," she scoffed. "I'm on a fixed income. I can't afford to give away that kind of money. It was strictly a loan." Karen looked at me. I gave a tiny nod. "Mrs. Albright," Karen said, reaching for her laptop, "I'd like to show you a piece of evidence, Exhibit C." Margaret frowned. Her lawyer looked up, confused. "We haven't received an Exhibit C in discovery." "It was discovered yesterday. Impeachment evidence, admissible without prior notice." She turned the laptop screen toward Margaret. She turned the volume up to maximum. She pressed play. The grainy slitage of our living room filled the silence. David's happy voice, the pizza box, and then Margaret walking in with the champagne. Margaret froze. Her mouth opened slightly. The cane slipped from her hand and clattered onto the floor. On the screen, digital Margaret spun around. "It's not a big deal. It's my gift to you, my investment in your future. I don't want you worrying about money. This house is yours forever." The video ended. Karen let the silence hang there. It was heavy. It was suffocating. Margaret's lawyer, Mr. Henderson, closed his eyes. He slowly massaged his temples. He knew his client had just lied under oath on camera in a way that was irrefutable. "Mrs. Albright," Karen said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "you just testified under oath on camera that you never referred to this money as a gift. You testified that you explicitly asked for it back." Margaret was stammering. Her face had gone blotchy red. I was just being polite. It was a figure of speech." "This house is yours forever" is not a figure of speech. It is a statement of intent, and "it's my gift to you" is a legal definition. Karen closed the laptop with a snap. "Mr. Henderson," Karen turned to Margaret's lawyer, "we are done here. You have 2 options. Option A, you drop this lawsuit with prejudice immediately, and your client pays my client's legal fees of $10,000. Option B, we continue. I submit this video to the judge. I file a motion for sanctions against your client for perjury and filing a frivolous lawsuit, and then we sue her for malicious prosecution." Mr. Henderson didn't even look at Margaret. He looked at Karen. "Give us 5 minutes," he said. We stepped out into the hallway. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. David leaned against the wall. He looked like he was about to pass out. "Did you see her face?" he whispered. "She should be. She just committed a crime, David. Perjury is a crime." 5 minutes later, the door opened. Mr. Henderson came out alone. He looked exhausted. "She's dropping the suit," he said. "She agrees to pay the legal fees. She'll write the check today." "Good," Karen said. "But," Mr. Henderson hesitated, "she wants to say goodbye to David." Karen looked at David. "You don't have to do that." David pushed off the wall. He straightened his jacket. There was a new look in his eyes. Not sadness, not anger, but closure. "It's okay," David said. "I want to." We walked back into the room. Margaret was sitting alone at the end of the long table. The court reporter was gone. The laptop was gone. Just her in her black mourning clothes, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. She didn't even look up when we walked in. She was staring at her hands. "You taped me," she whispered. "You taped me in my own son's house." "It was a home movie, Mom," David said, standing at the other end of the table. "We were happy. Remember that? We were happy." She looked up. Her eyes were wet, but they were cold. Even now, defeated, caught in a lie, stripped of her legal weapons, she couldn't find it in herself to apologize. "I only wanted what was best for you," she hissed, a flash of the old venom returning. She gestured at me without looking at me, "has turned you into a stranger. You used to be sweet. You used to be kind." "I am kind," David said softly. "That's why I'm not pressing charges for perjury. That's why I'm letting you walk away." He took a step closer. "But hear me clearly, Mom. This is it. You don't get to sue me. You don't get to fake heart attacks. You don't get to ruin my marriage. You are done." "You'll regret this," she spat out, a flash of the old venom returning. "One day you'll be old and your children will leave you, and you'll know how it feels." David looked at her with profound pity. "My children won't leave me, Mom," he said, "because I won't make them responsible for my happiness. That's the difference." He turned to me. "Ready?" "Ready." We walked out. We left her in that gray, sterile room with her cane and her lies and her checkbook. We took the elevator down to the lobby. We walked out into the rain. It felt like a baptism. We didn't talk much on the ride home. There wasn't much to say. The war was over. The enemy had surrendered, not out of goodness, but out of necessity. But as we pulled into our driveway, the driveway of the house that was now indisputably legally ours, David started to laugh. It started as a chuckle, then grew into a belly laugh. "What?" I asked, smiling. "The dress," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "She paid $3,000 for that dress. She paid $2,000 for the lawyer. She has to pay $10,000 for our lawyer." He looked at the house. "That's $15,000 she spent just to try to break us up, and all she did was buy us a new roof." I started laughing too. It was true. The settlement check for legal fees would cover the lawyer, and the leftover damages she had to pay for filing a frivolous claim would actually cover the renovations we wanted to do. She had literally funded our next chapter of lives. But as we walked up the steps to our front door, I stopped. There was a package on the porch, a small cardboard box, no return address. My heart died. "David?" I said. He froze. We stared at the box. Was it a bomb? Dead flowers? Another lawsuit? David stepped forward. He pulled out his keys. He sliced the tape. He opened the flaps. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a single object. It was the sapphire ring, his grandmother's ring, the one she had threatened to withhold, the family heirloom. He looked at me. "Do you want it?" I looked at the sapphire. It was cold. It was heavy. It carried the weight of 100 years of family trauma, of expectations, of conditional love. I looked at my hand, at the simple gold band David had placed there. "No," I said, "I don't want it in the house." "Me neither," David said. He put the ring back in the box. He closed the lid. "We'll sell it," he said, "and we'll donate the money to a charity for narcissistic abuse survivors. That seems poetic." We walked inside. We locked the door. We thought it was the end. We thought the box was the period at the end of the sentence. But we forgot one thing. Margaret was a woman of the theater, and every great tragedy has a final act. 2 months after the ring arrived, I was driving through